We are ready now to resume our study of the progression of thought in Proverbs 4 to 9 with poem number 6. This poem concentrates on theme B, that is, body behavior, and is titled, Beware the Behaviors of the Worthless. It spans Proverbs 6:12 through 15. The theme of reprimand does not surface in poem 6. Similarly, the theme of influential women is absent from this brief poem. With a series of 5 body parts, the theme of body behavior dominates this second poem of Cycle 2, just as body behavior similarly dominated the second poem of Cycle 1, that was poem number 3. The body behavior back in Cycle 1 was positive, outlining how the youth should behave if he wished to journey in the way of wisdom. In contrast, poem 6 is negative, outlining with several body parts how a worthless person behaves. The first 3 parts match in sequence the body parts found in poem number 3. Although in poem 3 there are some doubles, such as mouth plus lips, eyes plus eyelids. We've noted that the title of poem 6 is Beware the Behaviors of the Worthless. Just as the term worthless means without profit, so the body parts of the worthless person work together in a manner that lacks industry. Instead of making an honest living, this fellow squints and signals, resembling a wheeler and dealer rather than a productive laborer. His mind, that spring of life's initiatives back in poem 3, again here in poem 6, gives rise to plans, but with one difference. Now they are evil, perverse plans, seeding his community with schisms, 6:14. Just retribution related to health will follow his malevolent body behaviors. We read in 6:15, instantly he will be broken with none to heal. Consider next the theme of life in poem 6. Or rather its inverse, which occurs in this poem if one infers that the demise of brokenness just referred to in verse 15 amounts to fatal disaster. Appearing in the final verse, it occupies a strategic position in the poem. Let's summarize what we can say concerning poem 6. Coming as it does on the heels of a reprimand back in poem 5, a reprimand occasioned by laziness, poem number 6 holds a mirror before the sluggardly youth with his sketchy financial dealings. Here is what you look like, it declares. You are behaving like the worthless person. If the warning that closed poem 5 about poverty overtaking like a vagabond would not move the youth to action, that was 6:11, perhaps the shame in poem 6 of being classed with the worthless will convince him. So in this way, there seems to be an intensification of persuasive impact moving out of poem 5 here into poem 6. Consider next poem number 7. This also concentrates on theme B, that is body behavior. It's entitled, Beware the Behaviors of the Loathsome, Proverbs 6:16 through 19. Although this poem inveighs against a veritable laundry list of reprehensible behavior, it conveys no indictment for actual failing. It tells what ought not to be done, rather than confronting someone regarding a deed actually committed. As a result, poem 7 does not present the theme of reprimand. The theme of influential women is similarly absent from this poem. Instead, with its compressed catalog of 5 body parts, namely eyes, tongue, hands, mind, and feet, poem 7 concentrates on the theme of body behavior, as did poem 6, with its description of the worthless fellow. This doubling up, presenting 2 adjacent poems on a single theme, sets in motion the stair-step expansion found in Cycle 2. For in Cycle 1, each of the 3 themes dominates only a single poem. But now in Cycle 2, each successive theme presents one more poem than the last. Here's what we mean. Of the theme of reprimand, that's theme A, Cycle 2 contains just one poem, poem 5. When it moves to the next theme, that is body behavior, cycle 2 contains 2 poems, 6 and 7. And when it reaches the theme of influential women, cycle 2 will present 3 individual poems, numbers 8, 9, and 10. What about life, or its inverse, death, in poem 7? Death, as the inverse of life, occurs in poem 7, as it did in poem 6. Yet there's one crucial difference. In poem 6, the worthless themselves would encounter brokenness without cure. That was 6:15. But here in poem 7, death grows more sinister, since the loathsome person now inflicts death on others. His hands shed innocent blood, we read in 6:17, part B. Let's recap what we can say about poem 7. The first poem on the theme of body behavior, that was poem 3, presented a positive model with directions for entering the route of discipline that was described in the prior poem, poem 2. In contrast, the second and third poems governing body behavior are negative, that is, poem 6 and the current poem 7. They respectively catalog worthless and loathsome conduct. How do the two body behavior poems here in 6 and 7 relate to each other? The three-phase progression from first reprimand against lazy financial opportunism, poem 5, second to a portrait of the worthless fellow, that's poem 6, now in step 3 to a portrait of the loathsome fellow, poem 7, that suggests that the laziness of poem 5 leads to, or perhaps amounts to, the worthless behavior described in poem 6. And if one persists long enough in the worthless behavior of poem 6, that character just may slide quite effortlessly into the more aggressive wrongdoing of poem 7, with its consequent divine rejection. And that's stated in chapter 6, verse 16. In addition to sharing the body behavior theme, poems 6 and 7 have this in common. Strife spreading appears in each as the last listed behavior. In this way, the grandfather warns that wrongdoing does not operate in a social vacuum. To varying degrees, both the comparatively benign behavior of the worthless fellow and also the aggressively sinister behavior of the loathsome fellow will poison the well for the entire community. Strife reaches epidemic levels in the latter poem as the contagion of discord inserts its infection even among brothers. Chapter 6, verse 19. By listing this feature last, the poet registers deepest concern over the fact that malevolence has now gone viral. The loathsome fellow has succeeded in unraveling the very fabric of a resilient community. Now let's proceed to poem number 8. This concentrates on theme C, that is, influential women. It's entitled, Prize the Protectress, Beware the Huntress. It's from Proverbs 6, verses 20 to 35. While poem 8 does not issue any actual reprimand, it fashions one of the purest endorsements for reprimand as a premier form of wisdom, combining it with the theme of life. This follows a tristic, commending woman wisdom, in chapter 6:22. Referring to the compounded expression disciplinary reproofs, the poet concludes that such reprimands comprise nothing less than the way to life itself. Chapter 6, 23b. Various body parts appear in this poem, such as neck and tongue, yet the only part associated with the youth's voluntary behavior is the mind. Regarding the huntress, the sage cautions, don't let your mind fantasize about her beauty. 625. Self-control at the level of one's thought life recalls and also adds clarity to the landmark exhortation concerning care of one's mind back in 4:23. Against every imprisonment, protect your mind. What about the theme then of influential women in poem 8? Two female characters dominate poem 8, one positive and one negative. As a result, this poem shares with poem 4 the theme of influential women. One might expect that the positive woman of poem 8 would build seamlessly on the foundation of the positive woman of poem 4, that is, the youth's wife. But that's not the case. The positive woman of poem 8 is not the wife, but instead links back to the first positive female character of Proverbs 4-9, with her unnamed appearance at the beginning of chapter 4. The positive woman there in poem 1, who appears again in poem 8, is woman wisdom. As in poem 1, so again here in poem 8, the sage reports her richly benevolent activities without divulging her name. She will guide the youth, will shield him when he is most vulnerable, that is, during his rest, and will reason with him as he emerges from sleep, 6:22. In contrast, the sage portrays the antagonist woman of poem 8 with these phrases: wife of evil, ethically alien woman, some man's wife, and more specifically, the neighbor's wife. Behind her veneer of appealing charms, the antagonist woman lurks as a ruthless predator. The prey she stalks is the youth's very life. How can we draw together the observations here regarding development of thought at the point of poem 8? By this point in cycle 2, the grandfather has issued an incisive reprimand exposing the youth's economic bondage and castigating him for his lackadaisical attitude towards escape from that bondage. That was poem 5. He then proceeded to present two more poems in the body behavior theme, by which the youth, if he were paying attention, would have recognized it himself as non-productive, literally worthless, poem 6, and worse yet, as traveling a trajectory bound for pungent divine disfavor, quote-unquote loathsome to the Lord, poem 7. If the youth has at all felt the impact of messages delivered through poems 5, 6, and 7, by the point at which poem 8 begins, he will be reeling on the ropes due to his father's gloves-off candor. Consequently, poem 8 offers a strategic juncture where the father may, if he wishes, transition to a more tender appeal. And that is precisely what he does. What reads initially as a boilerplate summons opening poem 8 in reality contains two strategic components. First, an unusual inclusion of mother as well as father, thereby enriching the sense of parental care. Incidentally, within the span of Proverbs 4-9, the mother appears only in 4:2 and here in 6:20. The second strategic component that the sage includes is a caution against jettisoning instruction. Such a caution is timely, given that the likelihood that the sharp sting of preceding indictments, that is, poems 5-7, that sharp sting risks backfiring, motivating the youth to give up hope and plunge recklessly into deeper folly. If the poet's opening line achieves a more tender, familial tone by including the mother, chapter 6, verse 20, may not the depiction of woman wisdom there in chapter 6, 22-24 convey a similar increase of winsomeness? For comparison, consider how woman wisdom last appeared. Her relationship with the youth was marked by reciprocity, a tit-for-tat benefaction. In 4:8 we read, "Cherish her, so she may exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her." In contrast, woman wisdom here in poem 8 offers all her benefits without any requirement of one-for-one reciprocity. Again, I refer you to chapter 6, verse 22. The youth need only bind instruction to himself. Then all her benefits will follow. See verses 20 and 21. How does the sage's portrayal of a hazardous woman in Poem 8 connect to the way he portrays her in previous portions? The hazardous woman first appeared as the foreign woman back in Poem 4, together with her community that aided and abetted her strategy of enslavement. She resurfaces in this second influential women poem with one similarity and two changes. Similar to Poem 4, the woman here in Poem 8 continues to appear as a crafty foreigner. We see that in chapter 6, verse 24. The two changes entail, first, the compounding of untrustworthiness and moral trespass, since she is not simply foreign, but now she is also another man's wife. Verse 26. A second change is the fact that she is a predator. That's also in verse 26. These two changes heighten the peril awaiting the youth here in Poem 8, so that the degree of hazard posed by the enslaving woman back in Poem 4, that degree of hazard pales by comparison, since she now has become a huntress, not merely a seductress. The youth's identity reduces from being an amusing toy of hers, as would have been the case back in Poem 4, now to the prospect of becoming a mounted trophy on her wall here in Poem 8. Since this woman belongs to another man through marriage, to violate her brings no mere ruin by enslavement, as bad as that may have been back in Poem 4, but now it brings the bitterest of unrelenting vendettas at the hands of an implacable husband. So we see that there is conscious progression of thought as the sage builds on theme after theme in the rotating cycles of these three concepts. The next segment of the video will take up progression of thought in poem number 9.